Have you ever felt trapped between light and darkness? The works of Francisco de Goya, one of history's greatest artists, explore this conflict in a visceral way. In this video, we'll delve into the shadows that permeate his art and how they reflect not only his life, but also our own internal struggles. Get ready to discover how Goya transformed his anguish and disturbing visions into masterpieces that speak to the human condition. Have you ever wondered how pain can become beauty? We'll explore how his paintings reveal profound truths about fear, oppression, and hope. Throughout the video, we'll analyze the layers hidden in Goya's works and how they echo in our reality. Stay with us and uncover the shadows that not only defined an artist, but can also illuminate your own path. Let's go on this journey together. Francisco de Goya was born in 1746 in Fuentellados, a small town in Spain. From a young age, he showed a talent for art and moved to Madrid, where his career took off. Initially, Goya stood out as a court painter, creating portraits for the nobility and the royal family. His works were vibrant and reflected the optimism of the period, but this luminosity didn't last. What many don't know is that behind this success was an artist in constant transformation, struggling against his own shadows. As Goya delved deeper into his art, the political and social turbulence in Spain began to impact him deeply. The Napoleonic invasion and the Peninsular War brought a climate of fear and instability that would shine through in his works. The transition from an optimistic artist to a fierce critic of society is fascinating. How did this affect your creations? Goya became interested in darker themes, reflecting the disillusionment he felt with the world around him. He didn't just portray noble figures. He became a keen observer of the injustices that permeated his reality. In addition to the external challenges, Goya faced his own internal battles. At one point in his life, he suffered from deafness, which not only isolated him socially, but also intensified his introspection. This state of solitude led him to explore deep and complex emotions in his art. The shadows of his personal life began to intertwine with his artistic experiences. How has this shaped your work? Through a combination of pain, social criticism, and a search for meaning, Goya transformed his difficulties into a legacy that would echo for generations. His every brushstroke became a conversation between light and shadow, revealing not only his struggle, but the human condition in its essence. At the beginning of his career, Goya was known for his vibrant and illuminated works, reflecting the exuberance of Spanish court life. His portraits were full of color and life, celebrating the aristocracy and customs of the time. However, as his artistic sensibility matured, he began to question the true nature of humanity. This search for depth led him to a surprising transition where shadows began to creep into his work, signaling the start of a new chapter. One of the works that exemplifies this change is The Colossus, a monumental painting depicting a giant, menacing figure observing a scene of destruction. Here, Goya begins to explore the idea of an oppressive power hanging over society. This representation is not just of a physical giant, but also of invisible forces that dominate people's lives. The contrast between the monumental figure and the fragility of human beings is a powerful metaphor that questions the very essence of authority. Looking at this work, we are led to reflect: who really holds the power in our lives? Over time, Goya moved further and further away from the light that initially surrounded him. His paintings began to incorporate elements of nightmare and apocalypse, where light and darkness intertwine in a complex game. Instead of running away from what was dark, Goya chose to face it head-on. In The Disasters of War, he documents the horror of battle in a way that provokes deep reflection. This transition was not just aesthetic, but a true metamorphosis for the artist, who began to understand that in order to capture reality, it was necessary to delve into the shadows. This journey transforms his art into a mirror of life's contradictions, showing that even in the light, shadows will always be present. The shadows of war became a central theme in Goya's work, especially during the Napoleonic invasion of Spain at the beginning of the 19th century. This chaotic period not only affected politics and society, but also had a profound impact on the artist. Instead of limiting himself to portraits of the elite, Goya began to capture the brutality and suffering of ordinary people, giving a voice to the oppressed. The series The Disasters of War is a powerful testimony to this commitment. Here, he became a chronicler of human pain, addressing the horrors that are often forgotten by official history. The prints in this series not only expose physical violence, but also portray the psychological despair of individuals affected by war. Goya used a dark and direct aesthetic to convey the devastating consequences of the conflict. Images of corpses, torture, and executions reveal a cruel reality that many prefer to ignore. In creating these works, he forces us to confront the naked truth. War is not just a series of epic battles, but a series of human tragedies. This incisive look still resonates today, making us question what we are willing to ignore in times of crisis. What's more, Goya wasn't content with just being an observer. His art is a form of protest against the injustice and oppression that war brings to light. In The Shootings of May 3rd, he creates a powerful scene in which innocent people are mercilessly executed, representing the struggle between oppressors and oppressed. The choice of a dramatic foreground and the lighting focused on the faces of the condemned amplify the emotional charge of the work. Goya invites us to feel the pain of those who have suffered, reminding us that, even in the midst of chaos, human dignity must prevail. By looking at these shadows, we are challenged to consider our role in the fight for justice and compassion in a world often marked by violence. The Capriccios is one of Goya's most provocative works, comprising a series of 80 etchings that appeared between 1797 and 1798. This collection reflects not only the artist's technical skill, but also his scathing criticism of Spanish society at the time. Goya used this series to expose the hypocrisies, superstitions, and irrational behavior that permeated everyday life, revealing a world where absurdity often trumped reason. By confronting us with these uncomfortable truths, he provokes us to question our own values and beliefs. Each picture is a window into Goya's mind, full of symbolism and irony. In one of the most iconic, The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters, we see a sleeping Goya surrounded by terrifying creatures. This image is a powerful warning. When reason is ignored, darkness and irrationality take over. Reflecting on this concept leads us to think about our own monsters, those issues we prefer to put aside. This message resonates strongly in times of misinformation and fanaticism, where reason is often left in the background. In addition to social criticism, The Caprices is also a profound exploration of the human condition. Goya portrays figures struggling in absurd situations, highlighting the vulnerability and internal conflicts we all face. He uses humor and satire to address serious issues, showing that art can be a powerful tool for reflection and change. By laughing at our own failings, we are invited to adopt a more critical stance towards ourselves and society. Goya challenges us to look beyond the surface and face the complexities of life, revealing that behind every whim, there is a shadow that deserves to be illuminated. Goya's personal shadows are deeply intertwined with his life experiences, reflecting his internal struggles and insecurities. Throughout his career, the artist faced a number of challenges, including health problems such as deafness, which began to affect him in midlife. This isolation not only intensified his introspection, but also influenced his way of seeing the world. Goya was not content to portray only external reality. He delved into his own emotions, transforming his pain into art that speaks to us all. His works, especially the black paintings, reveal a dark side of his psyche. Painted in his later years, these works convey a sense of despair and loneliness, capturing moments of deep anguish. In Saturn Devouring a Son, we see a visceral portrait of a father consuming his own son, a powerful allegory about destruction and despair. This kind of raw expression begs the question, how do we deal with our own weaknesses? By exposing his shadows, Goya invites us to reflect on our own, showing that vulnerability is part of the human condition. This internal struggle not only defined Goya as an artist, but also made him a forerunner of Romanticism by bringing emotional and psychological issues to the forefront of art. By addressing his shadows, he reminds us that in order to understand life in its entirety, we must confront our fears and insecurities. Thus, his work becomes a form of therapy, a dialogue with the viewer about the importance of facing the darkness we all carry, making his art a universal and timeless legacy. Despite the profound darkness that permeates many of Goya's works, there is a thread of hope that intertwines with his shadows. The artist did not resign himself to a purely pessimistic view of life. Instead, he explored the duality of human existence. Even in the darkest scenes, you can sense a yearning for understanding and transformation. This approach makes his art all the more impactful, as it reminds us that light can emerge even in the most difficult moments. One of the most touching representations of this struggle between light and shadow can be found in his works, which deal with the human condition and resilience. Despite the atrocities he depicted, Goya also emphasized the capacity for survival and the search for freedom. In works such as The Family of Charles IV, he offers a critical look at the aristocracy, but at the same time invites us to ponder the role of empathy and humanity in the midst of oppression. This duality challenges us to find the light in the midst of chaos, encouraging us to fight for a better future. Furthermore, Goya teaches us that art can serve as a beacon in dark times. By exposing the shadows of society and his own life, he provides us with an opportunity for reflection and change. His ability to transform pain into beauty is a valuable lesson. Even if we face difficulties, there is always room for hope and renewal. In this way, Goya's art not only reflects his personal struggle, but also becomes an inspiring testimony that even in the darkest circumstances, light can shine through, guiding us on our own journey. Francisco de Goya's legacy goes far beyond his technical skill and the masterpieces he left behind. He became a key figure in the history of art, influencing generations of artists and thinkers. His work, full of shadows and nuances, challenged the conventions of the time and paved the way for later artistic movements such as Romanticism and Surrealism. Goya showed us that art can be a powerful tool for questioning and criticizing society, an approach that remains relevant today. One of the most remarkable aspects of Goya's legacy is his ability to approach complex themes with an emotional depth that still resonates. Contemporary artists often look to his works for inspiration, especially those exploring social and existential issues. By capturing the essence of the human condition in his paintings and prints, Goya has become a role model for those who wish to provoke reflection and discussion through art. As his vision continues to resonate, we are led to consider: how can art be a reflection of our own struggles? As well as influencing other artists, Goya also left an indelible mark on society. His works instigated debates about morality, power, and the nature of war, themes that are still extremely pertinent. By confronting the horrors of war and social hypocrisy, he not only documented his time, but also encouraged viewers to question their own realities. The impact of his critical vision can be seen in social and artistic movements that seek change and justice to this day, demonstrating that Goya's legacy is not only artistic, but also profoundly human. By reflecting on his contributions, we are reminded that shadows can guide us towards the light, inspiring actions that can shape a more just future. Throughout this video, we have explored the deep layers of the work of Francisco de Goya, an artist whose life and creations teach us valuable lessons about the human condition. Goya showed us that shadows are not just elements to be feared, but integral parts of our experience. He transformed his own struggles and the horrors of society into art that resonates deeply, revealing universal truths that still affect us today. By reflecting on his works, we are challenged to confront our own shadows and recognize that they are part of our journey. Through his dark depictions, Goya invites us to reflect on questions of morality, power, and the struggle for human dignity. His art transcends time, reminding us that, even in the midst of adverse situations, we can find a thread of hope. When we look at the difficulties and injustices of the world, we can be inspired by the courage he showed, recognizing that it is in the darkness that we often find the light needed to drive change. Finally, Goya teaches us that art is a powerful form of expression and resistance. By exposing his shadows, he urges us to seek meaning and fight for a better reality. By taking this reflection into our own lives, we are invited to face our own fears and use them as motivation to act. May we, like Goya, find strength in vulnerability and inspiration in difficulties, transforming our shadows into paths to light. If you've been touched by this journey, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share your own reflections in the comments. Let's continue this conversation about art, life, and the struggle for light in the midst of shadows. See you next time.